How do you want to do reviews from now on? Do you want to like keep going with the way we do it with the? What I mean by this is last time we did something really different. We did episodes by episodes. We did like chunks of
Mm.
episodes.
I mean, my previous suggestion was following
I think we should
the
do.
same model, the same model that Giga uses, the other guy who reviews stuff online.
Yeah.
And what he does is he reviews stuff by either first episode, third, or full shows. So he reviewed stuff by, depending on whether he watched it, whether he liked it after one show or one episode,
Yeah.
after three episodes, or if he'd actually watched the whole thing. So I thought, after looking at that, I was thinking maybe it'd be pretty interesting to go at three episodes.
That's what
At
I
least
was
that
thinking
way we'd
too,
have
because it's
a
a
lot
little
more to talk
unfair
about.
for us sometimes to just do one episode.
Yeah, it's plus it'll give us a much better opinion of the show
Yeah.
to if we go beyond one episode.
I
So that was my suggestion.
I think our rule should be if we're doing like because we discussed this even on the review, and I think we had some trouble try to do it. When we do a review that's going to be more than let's say more than 12 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're going to review something that's more than 12 episodes. I think like once we get past 12 episodes, we should be doing things in chunks. Like we should be doing one to such and such, to such and such, rather than
Yeah.
yeah. And I do think if we're doing, I like the idea more instead of us completely breaking down. I don't know. Did you when we do 3 episodes? Would you prefer we break down all 3 episodes, or would you prefer like to briefly touch on bit of it like we do in a chunk?
Kind of like what we do with the Rose of Versailles.
So in a chunk,
With the Rose of Versailles review. Yeah, pretty
because I think
much.
that works a bit better too. Like
Mm-hmm.
if we're going, we talk about like
Yeah.
we talk about the introductions to episode 1, then we talk about like some stuff that happens in episode 2, episode 3,
Mm-hmm.
and then we talk about pros and cons. And I think that's
Yeah,
a
pretty
good
much.
approach. You are listening to Alternating with Eric, episode 22. That's right. We are up to 22 now. We are back from our very long Rose of Versailles review. That was 40 episodes, and we did it in 2 parts because, oh my god, that's a lot to review. We are going back to our regular format, so that will be. Well, we're going to do now 3 episodes for our show. And we'll do obviously what we usually do with the manga review, like a couple volumes or chapters with that. But with today's review, we did an OVA series, and I only watched 1 episode. I think Eric maybe only watched 1 episode. So if it's a movie sort of length, then yeah, we'll just review 1 episode or something like that. If it's about 50 minutes or something like that. But yeah,
Mm.
that's basically what's changing and that's what's happened. But Eric, how are you doing? How's things going for you at the moment?
Oh, same old, same old. It's just been work for me, and been trying to clean up my house. This week's for an inspection. I've been sprucing up my room. I've managed to get myself a shelf for my books and a lazy boy armchair, which is great. Secondhand, obviously, but it's very good, and it's an old one. By that I mean it has a wooden lever to actually open up. So yeah, nothing wrong with that, and it's still pretty cool.
Mm.
And yeah, I've also been glad for this kind of relaxing week because I've also been able to kind of rewatch an anime I used to watch previously called Bungo Stray Dogs.
Ah,
Um, I liked it.
Mm.
It kind of reminded me of a more funnier version, of a more relaxed version of Bacano or Durara, but it's
Sorry,
closer to,
no,
sorry,
no,
what?
keep talking.
Yeah, it's closer to what Durara is than what is to Bacano. Bacano has a lot of style and flair to it. Bungo Stray Dogs is just it's just really all about comedy more than anything.
Mm.
Even though they try to increase the serious, have some serious undertones, it just doesn't work. But it's entertaining, and I really like watching it. And I really like the fact that even though these people here have superpowers, there's massive limitations to it. Kind of like in what is it, in one of our previous reviews where we reviewed Night Raid. So I
Mm.
really like the Bungo Stray Dogs because it does have superpowers, but they're severely limited, so it makes the characters think a bit more about how
Mm-hmm,
to
mm-hmm.
use them.
Is
Over
is that the one that's got like historical authors in it? That's got like
no,
powers and stuff. Like it's got Osamu Dazai and Edogawa Rampa.
no, it doesn't. No,
Which
not
one am
that
I
one.
thinking of then?
I'm not sure. But this is Bungo Stray Dogs. I've only managed to watch halfway through the first season. This has got 3 seasons in it.
Hmm.
So I've been trying to catch up on that. But yeah, and otherwise I've just been kind of randomly looking through mangas just to see if there's anything I can find there to read. But other than that, I've also been catching up on some of the books I have at the moment. So yes, I managed to finally touch up on a couple of books to read. One is a Dostoevsky book,
Mm-hmm.
not Crime and Punishment. It's the Brothers Karamazov, which is a great book because it's finally made me realize what the actual story is about. It's just about a family of man whores.
Okay.
Um, yeah, it's no, literally, that is
Typical
what it's
Russian
about.
literature.
Oh, it's very interesting though. Um, it's just it's interesting, but it's nuts how this family acts and just kind of and it gets really dark even sometimes. There's even I think I've read past a certain part where there's a presumed I don't know, maybe presumed consensual sex, maybe
Mm,
presumed
mm.
rape of the main one of the main characters. No, the main character performed that action, not the other
Sorry,
way
who
around.
who's the author of this? Is this a female work or is this a male work?
No, male's work of
Okay.
Fyodor Dostoevsky. So this is a author of books such as The Crime and Punishment,
Okay.
which is a really,
What's
really
the
popular.
era? Is it like when was it written?
Uh, whew, I think mid 20th century.
Okay, okay. Now it's
So
starting to
there's
make a bit
some
more sense to me with the
there's yeah, the book is quite old, and so is all most of the other works. But it is quite it's got some dark undertones to it and some lighthearted humor here and there. But all the time, you kind of start to realize that the main characters, who are the family of this book, are just could be bastards sometimes. I think I think the worst thing they've done so far, other than that presumed action, is the fact that they've managed to what is it? Kind of be rude and obnoxious in front of a father superior,
hmm
which might not sound too bad, but at that time and age, it would have been a taboo and like a big no-no, because you can't be that rude and inconsiderate in front of a man of God. So that happened.
hmm
And the other book I started reading that I've kind of put off at the moment, but I still want to get through it, is a book by Robert Junk, which is titled Brighter Than a Thousand Suns, which is about the immoral and political history of atomic scientists. It's a really interesting book because with the cover of it, it doesn't look like something that you'd presume it to be.
Mm.
But so far, it's looking okay. Um, would like to continue reading it. And as for me and gaming, I've continued to play War Thunder and World of Warships, but I've also managed to buy a few games from the last sale.
Didn't you have over
Um,
200 games already in your Steam bloody
shush,
backlog?
shush, shush. No, this is just me just kind of cleaning up my wish list. So I've managed to get something like a game called Rock of Ages, which is basically a game of the same style and scenarios of Monty Python.
Okay, so it's not a
A
Def Leppard themed game.
no, it's not. It's just about a game where you roll a boulder down to try and hit the enemy's stronghold.
Hmm.
And basically, you know, along the path, you and your enemy can build up obstacles to stop the other's boulder from hitting your base.
So it's the
And
literal context of the word rock, not the musical term of the word rock.
more or less, you know,
Yeah.
obviously, there's a lot of themes
Oh, you cut up
tie
there.
into what this same parody style of Monty Python, which makes this so much fun. And there's a second game to it, but I didn't manage to get it. I've also managed to get the sequel to One Finger Death Punch,
Hmm.
so that is such a fun game. I've also got an old Don Bluth game, or you
Dragon
know, Don
Slayer
Bluth,
or something.
yeah, Dragon's Lair,
Ah.
which is an extremely hard game, and yeah, I'm having quite a bit of difficulty with it.
Mm.
And the last game I bought was Hollow Knight, which is supposed to be a Souls-like, which is a new category pertaining to games which have the same difficulty as Dark Souls. And
Hmm.
it's a lot of fun. It's really fun. It's a really fun game, although I can't say I'm pretty good at it, but it's always good to try. And yeah, those are the fun games I managed to grab. Otherwise, I've just been playing games here and there. I've been going through my collection of stuff. So just because I buy some new things does not mean that I ignore everything else, Connor. But yeah, that's pretty much been my week. What about you?
For those who don't know, I am also well, actually, I'll get this out of the way. So, for those who don't know, I run a second podcast. You've probably heard me promote it a couple times. I think we even put an ad in there a couple times for the podcast. So, I was running one before this podcast called Insert Cast, and my listeners of that podcast and the ones, there might be a couple who are listening to this who also listen to that. But what they might not know is that for that show, each week before I did it, and I guess I sort of do that with this show as well, but I did a lot of research before I got any guest on, and then I also had to get the guest on. And usually getting a guest on for the show, which Insert Cast was a show where I interviewed people in the audio industry, and I did about maybe, I think I had 12 episodes or 11 or something like that. So for that show, I had to secure guests, I had to work out a time with them, and usually what that meant is I'd have to work out like a day of when I was going to have the interview. And if I had someone from the US, usually the interviews were done in the mornings, about 10 or sometime around about that here, so that it was about 6 or sometime around that there for them. At least that was the way I did it when it was like central time for people in like Nashville and places like that. But what I found, like the big problem I've had lately trying to do that is, one, it takes me sometimes 2 weeks to even like 2 months for me to like get an actual guest ready for the show. Then it takes me another week to do prep, and then a couple like days to try and figure out a time. And it takes so much time up. And then at the moment now, like I'm in a job situation where I am a temp worker, which means I'm a temporary worker. So it's not bad, but what it means is I don't have the kind of consistency and I don't have someone like Erik where I can just say, hey, we're recording this Saturday and we're recording this Saturday, and I know I have to leave Saturday 3 or Sunday 3 if we're recording, and we record on a weekend, so that's pretty good for us in terms of if I get a job, because most of the time when I get a job lined up, it's usually not on a weekday, and Erik works most of the time on a weekday and then also has his martial arts classes, so most of the time the weekend just works better for us in general. But trying to do this podcast with Erik that I enjoy doing a lot, and then also trying to do the other podcast where I interview people, which was really fun at first, but was honestly like I liked when I did the interviews, but all the stuff beforehand was getting really hard to do, especially when it was like, hey, I don't know if I'm going to be, I look at my weekend and I don't know if I'm getting a call in for the week after. Like, I don't know if I'm going to be called in on the Monday to work through that whole week, or I don't know if I'm going to be, because we had lockdown for a while here, and when you're on lockdown, it was actually easier to arrange time for guests. But then the problem I had then was that people in the audio industry didn't really want to come on and promote their gigs or other things like that when there's a pandemic going on, because there's nothing really for them there. And I think a couple people didn't mind talking about it, but like I had Seth Cook on, who was great, but there weren't too many other musicians who were really interested in doing this sort of thing. So, well, I did have some other ideas for some people lined up, and I wanted to continue with it. I've decided not to do it until maybe next year. But yeah, so there's a message of that out on the Instagram, and I'll put a message out on the Facebook as well about that. So I just wanted to touch on that. That's just some bookkeeping, some things to get out of the way. But in terms of what I've been doing other than sorting out that mess, I've been also I'm a big DC fan as well as a bit of an anime fan. I would say I'm gonna get some hate for this, but I prefer DC over Marvel, and I'm not talking about the movies. I'm talking about the comics and the animation, because they just do it better. Sorry.
Hey, I'm not gonna say anything.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We have Batman, Martian Manhunter. We have Darkseid, which is a better version of Thanos, and was basically Thanos before there was Thanos. We have Deadman, who is a pretty cool superhero who was we have a lot of gymnastic superheroes, so they can do flips and shit. And Deathstroke is I like the Punisher a lot. That I will say that almost beats Deathstroke, but I do like Deathstroke a lot. But my point is, since I like DC, I have recently I had Netflix open and was looking for stuff to watch, and I re-watched a bit of the Spider-Man movie, the Homecoming one, because it was on Netflix. Had a bit of fun with that, but I was like, I want to watch some DC stuff. DC's my main game. So I put on Young Justice because that was on, and I was like, I remember really liking that show. And I watched it, and I didn't cry, but I got emotional at one point when I got to see there's an episode where the Justice League kind of gets brainwashed, and they're going against all the younger members, all the sidekicks, and getting to see Robin and Batman fight, and Superboy and Superman. Like, I'm not even a fan of Superman, but getting to see Superman and Superboy fight and Robin and Batman fight, it was just a cool moment. It made me feel like how I felt when I saw Avengers Endgame, where I'd been like watching all those movies, and then I go and see one where they're all together and they're all fighting together. It was, that was a cool moment. And then I'm seeing all these characters I like in DC fighting, and it made me upset because I was like, God damn it, can the DC movies be good so I can have a moment like this? Because I'm like, I might not get a moment like this, especially with COVID. Like, Batman's looking promising, but I don't know about some of the other characters and what they're doing. So I watched that. Did you ever watch Titans, the new Titans show that's been out?
No, I never managed to. Never managed to watch it.
I'm not boring you, am I, with my DC talk?
What? No, you're not.
Should I talk about direct current electricity instead of comics?
No, I'm always like this. Don't worry about it.
I can talk about DC current as well.
Yeah, I should really point out to everyone, and that is that I'm just always like this. I'm always constantly tired. Unfortunately, so it's not anyone's fault or anything.
Well, we also did a 40 episode review the last 2 weeks, so that took a lot
there's
out
that
of us.
There's that as well, and yeah, no, don't worry, you're not boring me.
Yeah.
But it is always fun to hear somebody's opinion of why they like DC or Marvel without the screaming going, I like it because it's better than Marvel. I like it because it's better
I
than
think Marvel
DC.
has some good teams and stuff. I just like the characters more at DC, to be honest. Um,
Person-
yeah,
personally, I got my favorites in both sides. I like the Green Arrow in DC just as much as Hawkeye in Marvel. I definitely enjoy what is it, Wonder Woman over Natasha Romanoff or Black Widow. Even
yeah,
though
yeah.
Black
I'm
Widow is
definitely
Russian and
with you on
awesome.
that.
But if there's one thing I love, which character trumps everyone else that I personally feel will be Ghost Rider because you can't deny Ghost Rider is cool.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
because I read quite a few origin stories of his. Like his origin story is quite broken up, so there's multiple versions. In one version, it's all pretty much the same. It's because somebody died in front of him and he made a deal with the devil. But
Yeah.
where it's different with every version, it's his uncle, it's his grandfather, it's his dad, it's his brother. It's a
What?
different person every single time, but the origin is pretty much the same. You obviously get the superpowers, but the story follows differently as well. How he basically deals with the devil. So the version with the Nicolas Cage is not the only version. I think my favorite version by far is one where the devil tries to, by some set of laws, the devil in the Ghost Rider universe can't enter Earth, can't enter the mortal plane for various reasons. So what he actually tries to do is follow the Ghost Rider through the way he does it. But that ends up being a bad idea because then the devil splits up into multiple pieces, and each piece infects a person. So becomes the devil. And essentially, like a lot of chaos comes about, and the Ghost Rider has to ride around and try and kill each of the piece of the devil that he can find. The upside is it's easy enough to see which who is actually possessed by the devil, and because the devil is pure evil, the Ghost Rider just needs to walk by a person, transform, and suddenly, aha, you're the devil.
So
The issue then becomes that the devil has split up into about 666
oh
pieces.
yeah, yeah.
So there's
Yeah.
your religious undertone.
What are your
So
thoughts
obviously,
on because Spawn is very similar, like his origin and his character.
I never managed to get into Spawn,
Yeah,
to be
I like
honest.
Spawn, but I could see why people who like Ghost Rider could be a bit pissed off with like the character being kind of similar, because he is kind of Batman Ghost Rider when you think about it.
Yeah, but I think the reason I never got into him is when I watched his movie, like
Oh,
years ago.
that's a bad way
Yeah,
to start. You need to watch the animated
it is.
series. That's the best
Yeah,
version of it.
it's kind of put me off from watching anything about Spawn, after
Yeah.
watching the movie,
Just
unfortunately.
just watch the animated series. That's the best way to go. You get Keith David in there, who's doing a fantastic job. They get the look of the comic right. There's a couple things here or there that aren't great, but for the most part, it's a pretty good show. Yeah. No, I don't. I've actually read some Ghost Rider as well. I'd say he's a pretty cool Marvel character. My main favorites at Marvel are Spider-Man and the X-Men. I like most of them. But I've read a couple issues of Ghost Rider. They're both the one where he's like got the car and when he's got the bike. I wanted to
I
know though,
def-
what are
uh,
your, because they just announced it, I think a couple months ago or before, maybe even before COVID. What do you think of Keanu Reeves being the next Johnny Blaze?
I haven't read too much into it. I've only heard about
No,
it
what's just your
very
general
recently.
thoughts on him being Johnny Blaze as a Ghost Rider fan?
Mm, I don't know.
You want Nick Cage back?
No, I don't want Nick Cage back. It really depends. It might work given how he acted as John Wick in the John Wick series. Um, but then again, it does run the risk of him going kind of back to his acting when he was Neo from The Matrix. So it's
He doesn't always do that though.
he
He can
doesn't
be a good
always
actor. He's a
he
good
doesn't
action
always do
star.
that. Yeah, he doesn't always do that. It's gonna be a matter of who the director will be for for the movie or the TV series for Ghost Rider, and depending on who it is, they'll decide how Keanu Reeves might act
Yeah.
in terms of being the Ghost Rider. You know, if he's going to act like John Wick, that's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
If he's going to act like Neo from the Matrix, that might put off some people because you know, you can make Ghost Rider look cool, but he has to be able to act cool
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. And,
So
and,
yeah, so
and just to keep it more anime, Ghost Rider is, just so we're still on the topic of that, Ghost Rider is obviously best girl, most moe.
I don't even know
No, I'm
how to
kidding here.
answer that question.
I'm just trying to somehow make this about anime because I'm worried we're going too off topic, but whatever. This is the catch up, so I guess we can talk about whatever. Because I did watch the new Titan show. I didn't think it was as bad as everybody said it was. I could see why people had a problem with Starfire, because I personally think the lady who's playing her is a bit too old and a bit too. I don't know, like, I wish they'd be silly with her, because I feel like she's a silly kind of giggly character, and that might just be because I've watched a bit too much of the TV show. And not read enough of the comics. And I've read Marv Wolfman's run, and she's a little bit more serious than that, a little bit less ditzy. But even then, she is still kind of a ditzy girl in that run as well. So I was kind of hoping for someone a bit more like Ariana Grande or someone like that to play Starfire, like that kind of looking person. I have no problem with them casting a black person or anyone like that. I just think they need to be a bit more peppy or a bit more ditzy or something like that.
Yeah, because if they make a character too dark,
Yeah.
then that just kind of
It was like the same problem I had with the new Justice League movie. They made Cyborg into like an emo dude.
Mm.
And he can get angry and upset, but I like him a lot more, and I've been recently. So I watched Titans. I liked Beast Boy. I liked Raven. I like Robin. I like most of the stuff they're doing. I do wish they wouldn't be so afraid of like putting them in like with the powers and well, they're not afraid of the powers, but like I wish they wouldn't be so afraid of making it a bit more of an all ages thing in some moments, because it's like they can be in the tower, they could act like teens. They don't have to be like brutal, you know, all the time. They can have moments like that. It can get dark, but they can have happy moments too. Like, I don't know. I didn't mind it. I didn't completely hate it, but I didn't love it absolutely either. But I don't hate the cast. But I did really like they introduced the Doom Patrol in one of the episodes, and that
Oh
just
yeah,
instantly, yeah,
I watched clips of that.
yeah.
It
So
actually looked
it's good.
okay.
It's good. I wasn't gonna check it out, and then I saw the episode of them in Titans, and I really enjoyed that. And I enjoyed Titans' version of Slade. They have a good version of Slade as well. I want to make that statement as
Oh,
well, because I'm a big fan of
oh, I
Deathstroke,
definitely saw that. I
and
definitely saw that.
yeah, he's good in that. And he looks like the way he should look in the comics, and I approve of that. So that was cool. And I like what they did of his backstory. That's the one
Mm.
thing I will approve, because his backstory in the comics does get a little bit messy and silly in some places. But I watched Doom Patrol, and I think that's the best version of Cyborg I've seen in live action, is the guy they've got for the Doom Patrol. He's a little bit goofy, he's a little bit silly, he can be serious, he gets the dark moments, but he's not a brooding character for half the fucking movie that says like booyah
Hmm.
once as like a weird, just a weird thing out of nowhere. Like he acts like the way I think he should act. I just really like the version they've done with him. Like he's a good middle ground, and there's a moment that just sold me on the show. That is just so funny and so good, where Robot Man is in the car waiting for Cyborg because he's going to talk with someone, and Robot Man is picturing him and Cyborg in like a 70s like a 70s almost blaxploitation style cop drama where they're like sliding over the car, like Starsky and Hutch, almost a little bit like that. And like, yeah, seeing him, and
Uh,
what's great is for us DC fans who have read some of the original Titans run, where Cyborg has a little bit of an afro, but he doesn't in this new show or any other material. They've just given him like a modern haircut. But in that one, they gave him like a slight afro, and part of it was like, oh my god, they gave Cyborg like the afro that he had in the comics.
Mm.
I was so happy, and I got to see him like wear that. And Timothy Dalton is the chief in that show, and because he's the chief in the show, they just made him the police chief as well in the like fantasy cop drama thing that Robot Man's picturing. And so you get to see Timothy Dalton in this like awfully afro wig yelling at Cyborg and Robot Man, and that was pretty good. So I got sold on that show with just that little moment, and the cast is just really likable and really good.
Mm. Actually, so it does sounds like a lot
Yeah.
of fun, although
The,
I haven't seen it.
the only problem, so I'll say this happened with me. I accidentally watched the second season first and then watched the first season afterwards by accident.
How'd you manage that?
So the website I went, because this, okay, so this is stupid, and DC, if you're listening, you need to fucking sort this out. I don't know where to watch Doom Patrol. I think it's on Amazon Prime or something like that. I know it's on the DC Universe network or whatever that they have in US and Canada, but it's not available in New Zealand, and it's also in America. I believe it's not compatible with all consoles. Like, I don't think you can play it on the PS4, so that's kind of shit. And yeah, so it's not compatible. It's not on a bunch of things, but yet they put Titans up on Netflix. They put the Doom Patrol episode that's in Titans up on Netflix, and then they don't put Doom Patrol up on Netflix. It doesn't make any sense, and it's not on Lightbox or any of the other ones I can find. It's probably on Amazon Prime or something like that, but it really shouldn't be. It should just be on Netflix, because I ended up having to watch this by other means. And when I went to watch it, the player just brought up the first episode that was out. So I watched Season 2, Episode 5, which was the latest episode that was coming out when I was watching it. Or the
How
latest
much did
episode
that spoil?
yeah.
How much did that spoil things for you?
Not as much as I thought. Well, I didn't know. I just was kind of confused watching it. I was just like, wait, okay. Because also they're a little bit different from the Titans. Negative Man is like completely different. People will know what I mean if they've seen both shows. But other than that, like, there wasn't too much difference from both of those. It was just like, oh, there's a lot of stuff that I feel like should be here that isn't here. And I feel like I've missed out on some things. But it was still enjoyable. And I liked all the characters, and it was, yeah. And I ended up watching another episode of that season, and then I realized, oh, I'm on season 2. Okay, I'll go back and watch season 1.
Yeah, that actually sounds like a bit of a muck up. Although, is it because you just couldn't find the first season, or because
No,
they made it
I
look
did
like the
find
first
the
season?
first season. It was on there. But yeah, I just Netflix, please, just put the show up on Netflix. It makes no sense that it's not on Netflix. You already have an episode of it technically on Netflix, just a part of another show. I don't care if you've made a licensing deal with such and such. We're in
It's I
COVID
think
right now. People
I,
are
th- I
stuck
think it's because
inside.
I think it's because of country availability, because of the new
Uh,
law that's passed, especially in the U.S. So some shows can't be provided to other countries,
yeah.
which is why when I look back on Netflix, it looked a bit more bare bones than when I remembered. But that was because of the new laws that were passed,
Mm,
which limited which kind of shows you can actually look into.
yeah.
So I think maybe Titans is not available because it's one of the shows
No,
that's been
Titans is,
limited.
Doom Patrol isn't, which is
Oh,
confusing to
sorry, right,
me
right.
because there's an episode of Titans that features the Doom Patrol, and yet the fucking Doom Patrol show isn't on Netflix.
No, yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, Doom Patrol wasn't available. Maybe Doom Patrol is not
yeah,
available because it's one of the shows
yeah,
that's they've decided
yeah.
doesn't have to be available to people
Well,
on the on Netflix.
I've got most of
So
my DC fix, even if it was illegal. And then I was talking to Eric actually when I was watching it. So I went back and rewatched the Arrow show, which I hadn't watched in years. I'm watching season 1. I remember dropping off that show, same with the Flash show. I don't know what point, but I think season 2 I dropped the Flash because it got too repetitive. And then I don't know what happened with Arrow, but I definitely watched season 1, 2, and I think maybe one other. And my only problem with it so far is well, actually, I don't have too many. I'm only on episode 2 at the moment, rewatching it again, and I'm liking it so far. I'm really liking the fact that he actually kills people. That's kind of cool. And
Hasn't he always killed people?
no, I thought
Arrow?
he stops doing that in a couple of the seasons because I've seen the crossover episodes of him and Flash, and I remember he
Oh,
doesn't
yeah.
kill people in those episodes.
Yeah,
So
I think that's because they mostly followed the Flash formula where don't kill people because you're the good guy.
yeah,
But with Arrow, there's more likelihood that he would have killed people.
yeah,
So in the first season and parts of the second and third, he did kill people.
yeah,
I think in the fourth season he did start killing people again,
yeah.
but I can't remember because that's when I stopped watching it.
I don't mind the show being kind of dark in some places. I like different elements of it and stuff, and I remember I didn't like the show a little bit because I wasn't, and people will probably disagree with me on this, but you even included in this. I didn't really like Deathstroke that much at first when I saw the show because I was a little bit weirded out by the accent, especially like the fact that he's putting on a gruff voice on top of
But
his like
isn't
New Zealand accent.
Oh, that's what you mean. Oh, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I'll agree with you on that one.
like I like Manu
The
Bennett.
accent was
I think
the
he's got the
accent
right
was
build.
weird. Yeah, the accent was weird, to be honest. I think he was trying to do an Australian accent, but it was something about it was wrong. I think that's what I
Well,
thought. Something about it was wrong.
okay, so I'm gonna do a bad imitation, but my problem with it wasn't that he's doing what he's talking. I'm not gonna do a bad he's doing I'm not gonna do a bad Australian, but what he's doing is he's doing like an Australian accent, but then the problem is he is also doing a really gruff voice as well on top of that. Like he's trying to do the Batman voice. He's trying to do that voice and then also do the Kiwi. And he sounded like one of those.
Actually,
He sounded
that
like a
second
Kiwi.
accent you did,
Hmm?
that second accent you did was pretty close.
Yeah,
I'm gonna mention right now it's pretty close.
because the reason I could do it is because it sounds like a farmer. You know, like when you like see those like
Yeah,
oh
yeah,
she'll be
yeah.
alright, mate. Yeah,
Mm.
bro. We can get a couple beers. Yeah, he's doing that sort of thing. But he's trying to do the Batman voice kind of with it as well. So it's like she'll be right. Like he's trying to do this voice, and it's just like it's took me out like a couple times because it sounds a little bit silly, to be honest. And the acting, I don't know, with some of those shows the acting can be a little bit tweeny and a little bit silly. But like yeah, some so that's like some of the problems I have. But most of the time it's pretty good. Some of the action is a little bit slow and a little bit goofy looking. I mean, you're more into martial arts obviously than I am, Eric, and you would know more than I would. But I don't know. When I watched Arrow, there was a couple good stunts here or there, but there was a couple times I was like, that looks like a pratfall. Like that looks like I can tell that's like a really badly choreographed
Yeah.
full.
A lot of it actually was, and I could tell for some of it.
Yeah.
It looked good, it looked brilliant, but I think some
Yeah.
of it was
And there's a
much,
couple fights where it's just too slow, and I can tell they're not like hitting hard enough at each other, or kicking hard enough, or I can tell they're doing really impressive gymnastics, but they're not really doing any making like physical hard contact with each other.
that that's kind of the downside. We know that Deathstroke is a great martial artist. You know, he's got
I'm
all
just
the
talking
skills.
about all the characters in Arrow and
Oh,
Flash have this problem.
oh well, I'm mostly talking about the Arrow because there's next to no kind of fighting style in the Flash. It's
Yeah.
just Flash going faster than his opponents
Yeah.
and then trying to beat them in some scientific.
Hmm.
But with the Arrow, there's a lot more emphasis on hand-to-hand combat, which is something I like. But at the same time, you just kind of think a little bit more and a little bit more authenticity.
Yeah.
I think when it came to the Arrow versus Deathstroke, I think it was mostly a battle of minds against
Mm.
you know, minds against brawn, and usually it's minds more than
Yeah.
brawn.
Yeah.
But when it came down to brawn, it's like, oh, okay, let's do
Wait.
this.
Yeah.
And actually, it did turn out well enough at sometimes, but then other times it's like um, Deathstroke being a
Yeah.
complete asshole.
There's
And yeah,
Yeah. There's just a couple times in the fights, and I don't mind this. Like I like kung fu movies when they sort of do this, where they have like a 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, like when it's got a rhythm to it. Because like with kung
mm,
fu movies, their katas are almost a little bit like a dance. Like they've almost so.
yeah,
I have a dance background, so I don't mind watching that and like seeing the dance rhythm and like the hit rhythm, because to me it's kind of fun to watch, and I picture like putting music underneath it and seeing like the rhythm and the timing. That's kind of cool to me. With this, like, there's some fights where they're almost doing something like that, where I can tell like it's not super hard. They're like hitting almost like a rhythm because it's like a practiced fight. Like it's a, like I've done stage fight training, so I know what a staged fight like can look like, and it is kind of like a 1, 2, block, hit, like, and the way this sort of looks, there's a couple times where it's just too slow, like with a couple of the hits, it's too well practiced in like a couple times, and it doesn't have like that rhythm that a kung fu movie has, or like a really hard hit like after the rhythm. Like you have a rhythm and then you have like a really hard hit to emphasize like the impact of like the other opponent winning the dance, you could call it. But with this, like the impact after it is usually a little too slow and not that fast. And I laughed. I'll have to send you it because it almost like I was almost watching it and thinking like that should be a meme. There was like a moment where the arrow is running and he jumps off. He jumps like off one part of the roof onto another part of the roof,
mhm,
and the jump he does was so silly I couldn't help but laugh. Like he did like, I don't know, like maybe it is a professional jump, but it was kind of like a weird jump. Like he jumped, he pulled his legs up, he put his hands like out like he was going to fly, and then like and then he landed. And this jump was not like a really high jump. This was like maybe like a step. So I was like, wait,
mhm.
why is he putting his arms out like doing like full legs up? Like, I don't know, like just, I guess films have trained me too much. Like when I see a jump like that, I expect it to just be like the person's, because it's from a run to a jump. So I expect when someone like runs and jumps, I expect them just to do like a regular run, and then they jump, and then they just land, and like they keep running, or they jump and like they midair, like legs apart, then run. It was just, yeah, it was a little silly. But anyways, I'm rambling a bit, and we're getting too much into DC talk, because that's what I've been doing. And as for anime, I recently checked out what we're watching today, and I watched. I don't know how much Erik keeps up with anime issues or anime Twitter or whatever, but
Not that much.
I saw on the YouTubes that people were complaining about a manga I had read ages ago that's now an anime. I think it's called Uzaki-chan. I'm surprised you haven't heard of it. Have you heard of it?
No, I haven't. What is it?
Okay, it's basically like a young girl. She's not that young. I think she's meant to be like maybe a year younger than the main character, and they're in like college or something. And basically, she harasses him all the time, and she's just like
Mm-hmm.
she keeps on harassing him for being a loner. And it is kind of fan servicey in a couple places, and I don't mean like they show tits and things like that. I just mean like there'll be weird parts where she's like sitting on a massage chair, or like so there's moments like that that are kind of funny, but at the same time you're like cringing because you're like, yeah, she's sort of young looking, but I don't really want to. So there's moments like that which are kind of weird, which I wasn't really big on. But what I like about it is, with a lot of these shows, we have like a girl picking on a guy and like making fun of him and stuff. The way they do it is usually like the tsundere kind of way, where like they're making fun of them for being like an accidental pervert or something like stupid or bad like that, or just like other stuff like that. This show, like, he's getting made fun of for going to the movies by himself. He's getting made fun of for like just doing things by himself a lot. Like she makes fun of him for being a loner, which I thought was kind of funny in like a couple places. Especially like there's one episode where well, it hasn't came out yet, but in the manga I remember reading this. There's a part in the manga where he gets sick, and she comes over to help him, and she just ends up making things worse. Especially when like I don't remember if this was when he was sick or when he needed to study for a test or something, but I remember in one issue, like, he's got a video game system and he lets her play it, and then, like, then she, like, says, oh, you rest and I'll just, take care of you. And he's like, oh, great. And then she wakes him up, like, within maybe 2 or 5 hours later, like, yelling at him, like, hey, help me with this game, I'm losing. And he's like, I'm sick, I can't help you. So there's, yeah.
Oh my god,
There's
that is
moments
just
like
ridiculous.
that make me laugh. I do think it's a really funny show, even though it's got some weird moments, and I can see why some people would maybe think the character looks a little bit lowly-ish, but she's not super, like, she just looks kind of young. She looks like a teenager a little bit. So I can understand why some, like, of the more like fan servicey moments are kind of bad. They do like put more animation on her tits and things like that in the anime that wasn't in the manga, so I could see that being a problem. But all the other like jokes and stuff, they're just, yeah, I don't know. It was a big issue to the point where people in Japan were complaining about it, and people in like Twitter and stuff were complaining about it. Someone said the show needed to be fucking euthanized or something like that. I was like, Jesus Christ, calm the fuck down.
That is just what?
Yeah, someone said like the show needed to be or the character needed to be fucking euthanized. I was like, Jesus Christ, it's like, what did the show do to you?
Apparently more than we know.
Yeah. Oh.
That is so weird.
Yeah.
Don't even know. Yeah,
So
probably a good reason I didn't look at it.
You should check it out. It's a funny show. So I did that. I also watched. No, I didn't watch. I've been playing Persona 4 Golden still, getting quite far in that. I got past Mitsuo, which made me so happy because that boss when I played it last time took me for fucking ever, and I think that was a point where I didn't finish the game. Maybe when I played it last time, so got past that milestone. But Erik is probably itching to get into the review, so we are going
More or less.
to take a short 2-second break, and we'll get right into the review. We are back from the tiny break, and now we are going to get into the show. It is called, Erik, do you want to try and pronounce this show?
So the show is called Shonan Junai Gumi, which appears to be the prequel to the Great Teacher Onizuka manga and anime. Yep. Unfortunately, I can't really remember much of the of GTO before. I have watched and read the series, but I can't remember much of it. And going into it with no real knowledge of the show into its prequel, I can see that it was a fun episode to watch.
So we only both watched the first episode, which is about 51 minutes, which is basically kind of a movie. So, yeah.
It's basically the same length, almost the same length as the first episode to Fate Stay Night Unlimited Blade Works. A good introduction episode, kind of shows you who the characters are, what their situation is, how they get involved, and essentially just a lot of slapstick comedy. Like a lot. So there's of course, a lot of tropes here and there, but I guess that comes with the series in itself. Yeah.
So we'll get into the main premise of the first episode. I did try watch a little bit of the second episode, actually. Technically, I watched like 5 minutes of it. All I can tell you is it looked different, and it looked like it was animated differently, which we'll get into some pros and cons on that when we get into it. Because, there's definitely some interesting things we can talk about with that now. But the main premise for this is there are two guys, two teenagers now. I think they're maybe like 15, 16. That'd be my guess. They talk about like coming from junior high, which I think
Mm-hmm.
is up to
They're going from one.
14 or something.
Yeah, yeah, they're going from one school to another.
Yeah.
As a
And
transfer because
basically,
yeah.
before they do that, they pretend to be like two adults. They try to like sort of clean their act up because they're both two delinquent teenagers who are from biker gangs or like who are associated with biker gangs. And their names are Akichi and Ryuji. And they get a job on like this cruise liner, and they're basically pretending to be adults, and they end up hitting on these two girls who pretend they're college girls, but they're actually their teachers, and hilarity ensues from then on.
I think the first bit of hilarity is how they lie, and neither one catches on, and they just try and work with that lie. Obviously, later on, when it comes to lie that each party lied to each other, that's when things get a bit worse. But at this point in time, it's become almost obvious that the two main characters, Onizuka and Ryuji, they're both delinquents after the guys they previously beat up come around to harass them more, and they just collapse an entire building just beating the crap out of them, which I thought was great. It's like
Yeah.
already we're not even a complete episode in, and already these guys have lost control and committed property damage. I really like that part.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Erik mentioned he's watched the TV show, a couple episodes. I have seen the entire TV show from start to finish. I watched it back in the day when I was doing a lot of DVD rentals and stuff, and I watched a bit of it in the dub. I watched it in the sub. It was kind of a bad/good dub because Steve Bloom was the main lead for Onizuka, and he was great. And then everybody else was kind of okay, sometimes good. And then they reused like people for like 14 different roles. And it was like really obvious sometimes, not so obvious other times, and then just really bad sometimes. So it was kind of a bad and good dub. And I remember even someone like asked Steve Bloom once about Onizuka, and he said something like, I don't know if I can legally talk about that, or something like like he was worried he was going to get in trouble because it's such a it's a show that's hilarious because Onizuka breaks like a number of laws sometimes as a teacher, and a lot of the humor from that show is in these OVAs, but it is very different. He does look very different, and there was no dub for this, so we just watched it in the sub, which I didn't mind. The sub was fine. The voice acting was pretty good. I'm going to get that out of the way. I think especially the guy who's playing Ryuji.
It kind of, the voice acting almost reminded me of. Sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You finish.
Okay. I was going to say the voice of Ryuji, who's Hideyuki Hori, he was pretty good. I liked him a lot because he got the silliness down of the character, but also a lot of the like serious moments too, and he could be quite serious. And the guy who plays Onizuka is also really good. I sadly could not see I couldn't find any roles that I knew like that he's done other than this character. Like he didn't go on to voice an older version of Onizuka or anything like that.
No, didn't see that either. But the one thing, what I was gonna say is, with the voice acting, it kind of reminded me of the way they acted. It almost reminded me of Golden Boy. Watching it, because the whole style of over dramatic speaking and just over dramatic acting of the characters.
Well, it's more of a comedic show as well.
It is, and that's why I like to compare it to Golden Boy, because it's quite similar. Obviously, when you have these two guys trying as hard as they can to just stay being
to get laid. Let's just be honest.
No, well, I thought they were going to be functioning members of society, but then it turns out they just want to get laid. I thought that's what they were at first. Now they want to get laid, so it's like, okay, fine. At least
more so, you could argue he's trying to be a good person, and Eikichi Onizuka is just not. he's got good parts of him, but he's really just out to get laid.
Yeah, I'll say. But no, they're it's funny because each time they try to just act the way they do, it just goes back to them being completely just go back to them being delinquents, which is always hilarious because I hardly see any shows where these guys just try to stop being delinquents and just act as normal as they can, and instead and instead just either continue being delinquents or what is it, just kind of die doing so. But in this show where these guys try to be functioning members of society or complete horn dogs, and then when it just backfires and they just go back to being delinquents, I think that's a good part of the comedy because all their attempts just fail and blow up in their face, and they just go back to going the same violent bastards they were before, which I still do like in comedy because
I'm going to get into that when we get into the pros and cons. But what's interesting is if you watch this, you'll know that Ryuji, like if you've read Onizuka or seen the show, you know that he actually comes out a lot better. Like Onizuka's a biker gang guy for a lot longer, and then ends up becoming a teacher and is still kind of like, he hasn't actually grown up that much when you watch the show. You're like watching both of these shows, you can realize like he's still got a lot of that personality and hasn't like some of that childishness. But you watch Ryuji in this and Ryuji and Great Teacher Onizuka, and you can see like a definite change and the type of person that he is now. And he's got his own bike shop and he's settled down. Like he's matured a lot more, I think, than Onizuka, like in Great Teacher Onizuka.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really surprised me is the fact that Onizuka was the guy wearing the glasses. Because his whole style doesn't seem to be fitting with what I remember of Onizuka in the original series. Instead, I thought the guy who was Ryuji was Onizuka, and I was like, "Whoa, okay, that's a big surprise."
Should we? Yeah, okay, so let's touch on the Pompadour in the room. The hairstyle that Onizuka has in the show was very popular hairstyle for like delinquents and biker gangs in the like sort of 80s and 90s anime. It was in a bit of 2000 stuff as well, but it's really common in like 90s and 80s manga with delinquent characters. It was the easiest way to say this character's a delinquent. I think one of the characters in Hajime no Ippo had a bit of a Pompadour thing. Wild 7 being one of the most famous ones. There's not many biker
Shaman King.
anime.
Shaman King had a guy with that kind of hairstyle. I was just going to bring that up. Because there's not that many. Shogeki no Soma.
Yeah, there's not that many biker gang anime, but when there is, they usually have this delinquent sort of hairstyle that's modeled after sort of a 50s kind of rocker, which is still
basically Elvis Presley.
Yeah,
they seem to be trying to emulate the guy.
Yeah, Elvis.
And it gets
Carl Perkins
it gets
sort of as well.
So ridiculous. Yeah, it gets ridiculous sometimes because some of these guys have this hairstyle at a length where it's like, how is it keeping itself straight? Like,
You're
what are
just
you
talking
using?
about Shaman King now.
Well, I mean, also Shogeki no Soma, because one of the characters in that, he has a hairstyle in the same way, and it's like,
oh, okay,
what?
Yeah. So it was a really popular hit. It's not that common now. You will see not as much. I didn't see any biker gangs in Japan, but apparently it was like a thing for a while there. It must have been because there's so much like characters every now and then in anime that are either associated with a biker gang or have been in one. Akira is probably the most famous example, but they didn't dress like the usual other type of biker gang with the pompadours. Even some Yakuza members and stuff will have this sort of hairstyle as well. But it is. I did see it when I was in Japan, but not on gang people. I just saw it in a bunch of. There's people that dance in Yoyogi Park and Ueno that dance to like 50s style music. That kind of dress up like Elvis or Carl Perkins, where they've got like the big pompadour and the leather jacket. and they've got like the jeans on, and they're like got a boombox, and they're just like dancing around, doing the twist like in the park.
So is that like a street performance, or is
Yeah,
that
yeah,
just a
like you see
style they
street
chose?
perform people like do that, but
Okay.
yeah, you sometimes get a couple people doing that. It's really common in Yogi Park apparently, and Ueno, but yeah, yeah, it's interesting that that's still sort of going, but it was, I think, definitely a trend because you see it in Yu Hakusho as well, and biker gang anime has just been. There's been a couple, like we read Bremen, and that had a biker gang in it, so it's definitely being like
Mm.
present in a couple different things. And this is this brief a slam dunk as well. Also has like the Pompadour haircut. Yeah, so it's been like definitely a sign you can show this is your delinquent, this is your biker gang sort of character.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, even Air Gear as well that I just remembered had that sort of thing as well. So it's definitely been prominent, and I wanted to touch on our history with like Japanese gang related media, or just I know you've watched some Sons of Anarchy, like you've watched some biker gang related stuff. I've never really looked
Just like
into
the
it.
first season and bits of the second,
Yeah.
and that's it.
Do you find that's an interesting subject though, like as a character
The way
study or like as
the
a
it is in a way, but where I think where it kind of um comes out of character with Sons of Anarchy is that that's taken to the extreme, you know. But for the sake of entertainment, that was the whole point. But some parts of it, where dodgy dealings around drugs, having to tell members of your gang to off someone else,
hmm,
gang warfare, having to make it look like a dead body is done by another gang so you can start a war and get on their turf. The
yeah.
lies, the harm in the family,
That's
the
the one
involvement
thing
of the
we
police officers.
don't
It
see
does.
in
It
biker
there's
gang
yeah
anime. Definitely.
yeah. It's in the Western media there's that prevalent trend
Mm.
where these kinds of things come about. But at the opinion of one of the guys I train with, Sons of Anarchy is a bit of a bullshit indication of a biker gang because they're too clean.
Mm.
And I know this guy because he's known biker gangs, saying as he dated one of their girls,
Mm.
and he knows how filthy they are. So
Mm.
when he watched Sons of Anarchy, he said, "No, they're too clean. It's all bull." So
Well,
yeah,
yeah, you bring that up. Actually, I just thought of it. Even Fruits Basket had a biker gang in it, so they must have
it did.
been. Yeah, it did. In the recent anime, they had that because it's in the manga. Because Toru's mum might have been like part of a biker gang, which is an interesting thing when you think about it. There's as I said, there's lots of shows that had biker gangs. It was quite a common. It must have been a common thing, but I think Japanese biker gangs are not as ruthless or as rough as, like, say, the yakuza, which just in general, I wanted to touch on this because we haven't really reviewed that much. We're going to review a yakuza related manga later on, and I wanted to sort of briefly touch on this because I don't really enjoy Japanese movies in general. I don't necessarily like them that much sometimes. There's a couple I like here or there, but I don't always like them that much, especially with horror and especially with Yakuza movies. The two biggest issues I always have with them is they're always, especially when you've got like someone like Beat Takeshi, who's a pretty good actor sometimes, not always great some other times. But the biggest problem they always have is they're always really quiet. They're either really quiet and nothing like happens, or there's like one big thing happens, and you have to sit through like hours and hours of nothing happening for one big moment. Good example of this is there's a movie called Boiling Point by Beat Takeshi. And that movie is so good. It starts with a guy shitting in a porta potty, in a toilet. That's the start of your movie, and then
That sounds like the something the cast of Jackass would
yeah, and then
begin
the
with.
rest of the movie is just people meandering around. There's not much dialogue. And then there's one moment at the end of the movie where a guy pulls out a bouquet and has got a gun in it and shoots some people, and that's like near basically the tail end of the movie. So you sit through like hours and hours of like sitting around with this like teen guy who's been harassed by this Yakuza guy. There's not that much interest in going to the dialogue or anything else. It's just people harassing like kind of each other verbally a little bit. And then there's like not much other dialogue other than that. They're kind of racist to like one woman at the moment, at one point, to like a black woman. And then yeah, that's kind of it. So you either get that, or you get like on the other scale, you get like Takashi Miike movies where like Ichi the Killer, where they're just fucking gore porn violence and like. I respect Takashi Miike for doing Ichi the Killer because oh my god, like that's like a career-ending movie if you were doing it in the US. Like no one would hire you after you do that. But in Japan, you know, you could do something like that. But there's a lot of movies that just try and do that, just try and capitalize on gore and violence, and then they don't really have like a plot or much else there, or they have one interesting character and that's it. And it's not enough to really get you into the movie. And as I've said about Ichi the Killer before, that's a property where I do feel like the author is trying to get the like that. That is a property where I do think I don't like people reading it because it can, like, it does almost feel like it's encouraging violence and rape and things like that. Which is usually not my stance on a lot of media, but that one is an example of it. But as I said, I generally don't like Yakuza movies, with the exception of a couple that I'm going to mention now here. I like a movie called Outrage. That's by Takashi Beat Takeshi. That's a really good movie you can check out. It's slow in parts, but it's not as it's a good medium between the two things I just complained about, being either too slow or too fast. Another good one you should definitely check out is I think it's called Minbo no Owner. It's kind of hard to find, but it's done by the guy that did Tampopo, which is about like a ramen, bunch of people going out and trying different ramen restaurants. It's a really good movie, Minbo no Owner. In fact, the director got beaten up by the Yakuza because they didn't like the portrayal that they had in this movie, because they are a bit more silly, they're a bit more goofy, they're a bit more interesting in this, I think, though, than they actually are presented in most media, where they're just kind of quiet but slightly threatening people. Versus this, where they're just loud and brash and they wear massively bright colors. But in this, they like lose to like a lawyer woman, and it's a really good, funny, but also interesting movie. So yeah, I would definitely recommend those two. And that's sort of my thoughts on Yakuza and biker gang sort of stuff. But Eric, what are your thoughts on that type of media?
On gangs, to be
On
honest, I haven't looked
Japanese
at.
gang related like media, do you find it interesting, or like mobster
I
and gang related stuff?
do, mostly from the perspective, mostly from the anime-ish perspective.
Yeah.
I can't say I've looked at a lot of movies where the Japanese yakuza were involved. I think some of the old ones I've looked at the yakuza as more of a more comedically than as a serious subject. But even in that way, there were some parts of it where, you've got yakuza, people who were identified as yakuza members had the massive tattoos, all the tattoos on them that go to the extremes, like cutting off their own fingers for punishment, and just kind of, or as we or as I can see from the yakuza games, dress up in really nice suits and walk around causing trouble. It's all a bit comedic from that perspective, but I think there is some serious undertones to it, especially with the intimidation factor they bring with them. And even animes and the other media sources do portray that. So Yakuza, while they can be, while they are shown to be comedic,
Well,
there's
we'll
still
get
an
into that
intimidation
comedic
factor.
title, because
Yeah.
we're reviewing something that's more comedic in terms of
Yeah.
Yakuza today.
but there's also still that intimidation factor that's put in there. So I think, yeah, unless I watch a few movies that I actually see the Yakuza as a more serious
What did you
subject.
think of Kaiji? Because Kaiji's got Yakuza in it, and I don't mind the Yakuza in that.
I can't really remember that. I think
It's the show with the
I fi-
pointy noses.
I know. I'm trying to remember, but I don't think remember the Yakuza and Kaiji that much.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think as far as I remember, they were mostly just
Yeah.
guys who controlled gambling rings, and went to the
Hmm.
extremes of cutting off um, some fingers from
Mm.
Kaiji after he lost a game.
Mm.
But I haven't seen him anywhere beyond that, so I can't really say that. They were.
Yeah. So our
Yeah.
general thoughts is I think they're an interesting subject matter, but I don't think me personally I've found material that has really interested me. Other than the two things we're talking about today with biker gangs, I think can be kind of interesting. If anyone's seen Wild Seven, that's a funny and great movie to watch. It's extremely violent, has a terrible dub, and is about like biker gangs, and it's kind of like it came out around Akira sort of era, so it's really fucking violent and bloody. So it's entertaining, and yeah, most of the characters are likable. But this show like doesn't really. It's a gang show, but it's not violent too much. There's a bit of like punching and kicking every now and then, but it's mostly comedic, kind of like the Onizuka show. Although, funnily enough, I would say the Great Teacher Onizuka gets a lot more serious. There's way more Yakuza stuff actually in that, at least from what I saw in this first episode to this episode. There was way more like gangs and Yakuza stuff in Great Teacher Onizuka. Like, especially in some of the later episodes, they get a transfer teacher who's like an ex like gang slash boy racer sort of member, and Onizuka has to have like a street race with her. Um, and then
Damn.
there's like gambling and stuff going on. There's like suicide. There's a lot of serious themes and other things dealt with that just aren't really in this show. And what's interesting is like there's a lot of things that like I was surprised to see in this that were taken a bit more seriously in Onizuka, like sexual assault and things like that, which were played a little bit more for laughs. But we'll get into that when we get into into the pros and cons. Which let's get straight into the pros and cons, because I could definitely talk about some things that went on
Mm.
in the episode that I had problems with and that I liked. So what are your pros, Eric, for this show?
It's good slapstick comedy. It's got a good structure to it, I think. It explains a lot, introduces the characters, introduces some of their thought process, their a bit of their past, a bit of how they interact with the characters, and even kind of their own struggles here and there. It was good. It was really good, I thought, in terms of how they in terms of the whole structure of the episode. I think it was really great. It was smooth. It was, the comedy was done well. The serious undertones were done well, and the conflict with the characters was actually really good. One of the things I'm kind of glad about in one part of the episode where the teachers, after realizing that the boys were going to have revenge on them by, blackmailing them,
Mm.
decided to go back, get back at them by getting one of the teachers' dads to hire two gay members of a gang to just fuck him up.
Mm.
Well, I'm kind of glad that that had its own resolution in which. Well, what happened? Like
Yeah.
they didn't really go through
See,
through it,
that's
and
that's gonna be that's gonna be a con and a pro for me. So I thought that was funny, but at the same time, I'm getting a little sick of male rape jokes a couple times, and I can
mm,
laugh at one. I can laugh at every one now and then, but I don't know, just me personally. But I did think it was kind of funny. I was laughing, but at the same time cringing at the moment where he's like laying down on the bed. This was the dub thing too. He lays down on the bed and like lays down in basically the position for doggy style. He lays down like
Oh my
himself in that
god.
position. And then he like realizes like, wait, the girl was supposed to. And I was like, dude, you laid yourself down in doggy style. Like, you don't do like you lay down like if I don't know, just like from my experience, you don't do that first. Just unless I don't know, unless you're into that, like unless it's something. But yeah, I was just like laughing, but at the same time, I was like, Onizuka, yeah. You
He's
kind
a
of
weird
gave him the
one.
go ahead when you laid in that position, like, or whoever girl you were. I don't know. Did he think there was going to be a dildo involved or something? Like,
I have no idea what that
because I
was.
was like, what?
I
Wait.
think
I was like laughing at the same because like him realizing the situation, but then also him like laying in that position himself. I was like, wait, why are you laying in that? Why is like that your go-to? Like, okay.
it was a weird part of the episode, and
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's a male rape joke, seeing as what is it? Seeing as the two gang members from the
But
story,
that gang
the
member's
story the
literally
teacher
hired
did.
because he's gay. They make a joke about him like chasing after people who don't accept his offerings, which, like, no
He
offense,
kills
that
he
is
kills them.
kind of the
Yeah.
anti-gay. I've seen this joke like, and I know what they're kind of implying. It's that kind of
Hmm.
anti-gay sentiment of like, oh, all
Oh
gays
yeah,
chase
yeah.
after people and all they want to do is rape you.
Oh yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that's where it's coming from.
Okay.
I didn't quite like that part of the joke.
Oh, okay. Now I get what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I guess with that in mind, yeah, it does kind of put off
That's what
from
I had a problem with.
that
Like, that
part.
was my main
Yeah,
problem.
yeah. I think that part is a little off-putting. Um,
Well, so
although,
Mariko's a dick. Like, I don't care if you get black. Like, the worst they were going to do was say like they almost slept with someone, which they could have.
yeah,
They could have denied. They could have said. They could have like denied it. They could have went another way of it. They easily could have like blackmailed them. They could have easily just got them expelled, or they could have like one way they could have done it. They could have said, well, hey, no, we didn't consent to this. We actually got sexually assaulted by them, or something like that, which would be actually a lot nicer than what they fucking did, which is essentially they hired a guy to rape Onizuka and Ryuji. When you think about it, it's pretty fucked up what Mariko does to them.
mm,
Like,
it
Onizuka is kind of bad, but Mariko is fucked up when you think about it.
yeah, she is, and plus, it's kind of rich of those two teachers to say, you two are delinquents. We hate delinquents. You lie to us,
Yeah,
and the guys are like, yeah, but we're trying to change our own image. We're
I
trying to
thought
be
that was
better.
so mean as well. I was
I
laughing,
know.
like, I didn't laugh at the joke when they came into class and they had like the only thing I laughed at was the fact that they had a Yakuza poster, like a biker gang poster of them, and they both had their dicks out. It was like, wait, why the fuck are you guys both nude? Like I thought that was kind of funny, but at the same time, like the fact that they're basically trying to fit in, they're doing well with girls and stuff, like they're just trying to like change their life. And then the teachers are like, no, fuck you, we're going to ruin your life and we're going to like put up essentially a nude photo of you guys like as the thing you're like trying to get away from. Like we're going to put it
Yeah,
right out in front street for everybody to see so your life, like your high school life is fucking ruined.
yeah. That was a dirty move to
Yeah.
make. I didn't. Yeah, that's kind of made me think that those two teachers are just
Not good teachers.
really petty. They're like really petty.
Yeah.
They don't like delinquents, but they're not so open-minded to think that these two boys could legitimately want to change to,
Yeah.
be something else. Okay, maybe being skirt chasing perverts might not be the best
Mm.
option, but still, at least they're trying to change. At least they're trying to be quite charming in the class. They try to get along with
Yeah.
everyone. And then these two teachers kind of come along and just sabotage this whole thing.
Yeah.
It's really, yeah.
So I would say for my pros, the characters have really good chemistry, both the male and the
Mm.
female characters. Like I noticed that straight away. They've just done a really good job of that. That's just the writing. I thought was the writing was just really good with both the male and the female. Just getting that sort of vibe that they're friends and they get along and stuff. And I did like as well I thought the art. Well, for the most part, I thought like the characters are drawn. This is gonna be a pro and a con. I both like the art and I don't like the art for reasons I'm gonna get into in a minute. But if I was not talking about from the animation and like the coloring and things like that, just the character designs I like. I think they look good, and especially some of the female characters looked pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I think, as I said before, the voice acting pretty good. Like I like most of the voice acting. They're good at the comedic timing. They're good at like the more silly stuff. The thing they did really well that I wasn't too sure on at first, but then I realized like it was actually really good casting, was the two teachers. Like they look kind of young, but they both didn't give them like girly, like young kid voices, which I was really happy with. Like they actually tried to make them sound like adults. So you kind of got a hint like, oh yeah, they're kind of like, they could pass for college students or younger, but they do actually sound like adults.
Yeah, they do. They do it pretty well. But at the same time, it did trip me up to realize that they were actually teachers when they when they were introduced as teachers, because I thought, okay, so they're older than college students, which means that so it's like they're pretending not to be college students. So what would they be? Workers, something like that. So when they were like
20s,
teachers at the same,
that's what I just
yeah.
assumed.
So when they were introduced as teachers, I was like, okay, that's a funny coinky dink. But it wasn't really off-putting. It would be something that's it'd almost be like a trope used in the media quite often, but it's not a bad thing. And plus, it does set up.
That's what I liked. I appreciated that they had the characters.
And it's a good set. It's a good setup for the conflict that's that would continue on between the two teachers and the main characters.
I'm going to say as well, I don't know if you agree with me on this, but I liked the second half of this episode a bit more, where it's because Onizuka gets to actually be kind of cool, and the other male character gets to be kind of cool, and they get to have a moment where they're actually almost succeeding, but they just don't take the success. Like, there's a girl who is like kind of, she's been around with a lot of guys, and Onizuka ends up like sort of going on a date with this girl, and then this guy who like she dated in the past, who's kind of like an ex-boxer who fights really dirty, like comes out, beats the shit out of him, and then like he ends up like at the end of the episode being a badass and like beating the shit out of him using dirty tactics as well. And then like the girl actually wants him at the end of the episode, and she actually wants him more when he like kind of says like, nah, I'm good, babe. Like he kind of leaves, like, So I thought the second half was like pretty cool.
I thought the second half was it was quite a lot of tension there, and I was really sad. Was really saddened by what happened to Onizuka, because getting smashed in the face by something like that, by what is it, a light post or whatever it was, that must have been really hectic.
Good impact. Like what did you, from a martial arts perspective, what did you think of the fighting?
Dirty. It's just dirty. It's not martial arts. It's dirty street fighting. Yeah. Because the guy, I don't know who it was, Mamada or something, Masada, whatever his name was. What about
when he actually started boxing? Did you notice like his technique?
Oh, that was pretty good. I think that was pretty good.
He looks like a southpaw to me.
No, that was actually just a regular orthodox stance.
Okay.
Southpaw is when he has his right foot, but I'm pretty sure it was mostly his left foot forward. So he was fighting from his left side. Although I might be wrong, I might have just stopped paying attention. But I think he did pretty well. I think they did pretty well with his stances and how he was fighting. Although it did turn to dirty street fighting once you realize, okay, there is something wrong here. Oh, he's got brass knuckles. Isn't that nice? Yep. What an ass.
Yeah, what an ass. I wanted to talk about, this is both I don't know, this might be a con to you or a pro to you. I'm a sound engineer, so I noticed in the mix, And I don't know if this was an intentional thing or if this was the case, but I swear the Foley, like a couple of the fight sounds, like the whoosh, whoosh, like in one of their fights was just the Dragon Ball Z fight sounds. When you see like
No,
opponents,
that wasn't your imagination. I heard that too.
yeah,
Although,
like
really, I can't remember
the
the Dragon
Foley,
Ball
like
Z sound like
you
that.
know what I mean? Like, okay,
Hmm.
so it's the sounds when like you see Goku or Frieza or someone fight in the air, and you
Yeah,
just
yeah,
see like the mirror image of fighting them, and you get like the. It's this kind of like I can't do it because I don't have reverb on this mic at the moment.
yeah.
But it's like this really reverberated like kind of like pipe sort of hit that's
Yep, yep,
yeah, like
yep.
like it's
Yeah,
this
yeah,
sort
yeah.
of like
I get
sharp
what you
hit,
mean.
like a high
Mm.
hit sound, and yeah, basically, oh, see if I can do it in here.
Hmm.
Yeah, that might have like something like a metal sort of thing hitting. That you've like reverberated, and then you've like put up the dB quite high, or you know you've put the pitch up quite high on it. And like yeah, I definitely noticed like that Foley sound, and that kind of took me back. But I was also like, hey, is that a Dragon Ball Z sound in there?
Yeah,
That's
I
kind
didn't
of
quite
cool,
notice.
but kind of silly as well.
I didn't quite notice that. So
Yeah,
I'll take your word for it because
yeah.
I don't remember. Yeah, I really don't remember
So
the
let's
thing
get
like
into the
that.
cons. The biggest con for me straight away, the two biggest cons. I think the manga is better, in my opinion. Just in terms of telling, like the voice acting helps a lot, but the music that I'll get into isn't so great in a couple places. It's 80s as fuck. There's one, well, it's like 80s, 90s as fuck. There's one point where the music, literally, I was like, am I listening to like wait, let me just see. The music. This is what I've written for the descriptor. The music is an '80s arcade game on acid. That's what I've put because some of the music sounded like they took it from Street Fighter, like the like they took it from the Sega Mega Drive version of Street Fighter. They then recorded it, and then they put that as like the background music. Like they put unused Street Fighter songs or something like that. Because like they're at like a disco, and it sounds like just the people who know sound will know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about like the bit rate and the sample rate. It sounded like really low quality, like clearly played on like a keyboard. With like a little drum machine sort of thing that's on the keyboard, like pre-programmed in. It was just yeah, the music was like the animation, very cheap and very crude, in like a lot of places.
I didn't really
Yeah,
mind it too much. That's just
I
my
thought for
personal.
1994 this looked pretty compared to. We just came off reviewing Rosa Versailles, and I think that looks better than this show in terms of
You
animation.
reckon? Do you
Yes,
reckon?
yeah,
Oh, okay.
I think it's a lot more
I, do-
fluid.
I I really didn't mind it that much. I guess the only bad thing I'd say is actually no, I wouldn't say too many bad things about the music. Um, I thought the music was pretty good, pretty how do I say this? It fit. I think it fit pretty well. It fits. It definitely fits better than the first season of Rose of Versailles. Um,
We're not
and
getting
because
into that again, Eric.
oh, if I have to win this argument, I will. No, I'm kidding. But I mean, I didn't see any too many
I
problems
just
with
thought it
it.
was a bit silly. I know it's a comedy,
Mm.
but there were moments where it was like, this isn't meant to be the joke part, and I'm laughing at the music, like how ridiculous it is.
Uh,
And I just thought the music was a bit cheap in places. Like, I think it could be a bit better quality, that's all.
yeah, well, I honestly didn't remind.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I honestly didn't
It's
mind
just
it.
me
So
nitpicking from a
it's
sound engineer
yeah.
point. Like, I just noticed I mean, the voice acting and like the sound quality of the dialogue wasn't too bad. The problem with some of these older shows, and we didn't have this problem with Rosa Versailles, thankfully, but a lot of them aren't mixed, like on really high quality. A lot of the tape and stuff like that back in the day. Fist the North Star, anyone that's seen that, love that show, but like the quality of the audio isn't always great. Rose of Versailles, we were pretty lucky, like the audio quality for that. They've got like Blu-ray high-res masters and stuff of that now, where they've cleaned up the audio and the animation and things like that. So we were pretty lucky with that show, but this show and a couple others, like sometimes the audio quality isn't always perfect. Of course, the biggest issue that is still kind of a problem sometimes with anime is the fact that you can't mix in 5.1 all the time, but I'll get into that maybe on another show. But yeah, I had a problem with the animation sometimes looking a bit crude. I mean, this is 1994. We had some pretty good animated stuff. Like this looked like the Berserk anime a couple times from the 90s, and I like the Berserk anime. I actually think the crude art style and like some of the roughness of it suits the show. But here I was like, oh, this could be a little bit better. Like the Onizuka show, Great Teacher, that came out in 1999, and the animation and like the look for that is like a little bit crude as well. Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's not. They didn't have, thankfully, because you didn't see this, but in one episode of Onizuka, they had a CGI car that is like season 1 of Initial D, like a PS1 car, like just turned up like in the episode.
You mean that red Camaro? You mean that red Camaro?
Or... No, it's not. It's like a white. I don't remember what type of car it was. It was like a white Toyota or something, and it looked like it was like the worst. Like it was pretty bad CG. And thankfully this show didn't have any bad CG, so I guess I can give that a pro. But is there anything else for you in the con like section?
Honestly, not really. I thought it was a pretty decent series, and the way it was structured, I really liked that. And it was just, yeah, it was just really enjoyable for me. I haven't got that many cons for this for the show.
Well, okay, so we'll just quickly get through our final thoughts. What are our final thoughts on this show?
I'd keep watching. It looks like a good prequel to the Great Teacher Onizuka series, especially with the fact that I forgot what the original series looked like, since I hadn't watched it in a while. So it would be good to at least finish watching the prequel and then go back to the original series and just kind of, I don't know, maybe the prequel shows some things that the original didn't have. Or if it's maybe the other way around, it's introduced some things that don't get mentioned. But I'll definitely try and I'll definitely want to have a look at it and continue watching it because it looks like a lot of fun, to be honest.
I enjoyed the manga when I read this like a long time ago. I just thought the animation looked a bit too cheap and a bit too crude in a couple places, and yeah, I didn't mind like a couple places, but honestly, I would rather just if I want to like get any more of the story, I'm probably going to read the manga. So since we've talked about Yakuza and gangs and things like that, let's get into the manga review. And this week I chose Goku Shufudo. Did I pronounce that right way? Goku
Shufudo.
Yeah.
That's the one.
That's a mouthful. It's basically about an ex-Yakuza who's like this infamous Immortal Tatsu.
Tatsu the Immortal. Yeah, Immortal Tatsu.
And he was this really well-known Yakuza guy, feared by all of them. He got into this massive fight where he took down like a whole bunch of guys by himself. So he's got this massive reputation. And then he basically gives up that life and becomes a stay-at-home dad. In this manga, they call him a house husband. And he's a great cook, and he owns a very cute cat. And his wife is she's like a business lady, but she can also, she seems like maybe she's she seems like kind of a tough chick as well. That's just what I got from her. She even knocks him out or beats him up at one point, which I thought was kind of funny.
She kind of slaps him around whenever he gets a bit too what is it, when he get kind of falls back into that his old style of being a Yakuza member,
Yeah.
which already happens, but it doesn't indicate it used to be as bad as it was before. And she seems to be the kind of girl who keeps it all in check. I honestly, I gonna try to keep reading this because I want to see how she does it. Like, what is it about her that makes her be able to keep him in check like this?
See, this is why I recommended Mimbo no Owner, because she kind of reminds me of the lawyer character in that movie, that Yakuza movie, where she's this like really tough but funny kind of lawyer chick who's like standing up to the Yakuza. And she seems to like they're not that frightened of her, but then like she'll just start talking and using her brain, and then all of a sudden they're like super like they like can't they're super like intimidated by her, which I thought was kind of like with this character here. Yeah, I really enjoyed this just in general. What did you think of this manga?
It is just silly, you know. You've got a guy who's basically still acting like who's still acting like a yakuza, but it's put into the it's put into the context of it's put into the context of him just trying to have a
Regular
normal life. Yeah, a normal regular life, which doesn't work.
Yeah.
They do trip you up sometimes, where where it looks like he's making ordinary deals. Like that one time he was technically setting up for his boss's birthday party, and that he was giving his old yakuza friend some
seeds.
Herbs for some herbs. But at the beginning, there was a police thing looking over this guy, thinking he was growing drugs, and then he was handing it off to people. And at the end, it's like, oh, what is this?
So one thing I wanna
it is extremely silly.
Yeah. This is a really good.
There's no but the
They keep going.
There's no there's really no flow to this. It seems to be this guy just trying to live out his life as a former yakuza, and basically just trying to fit in as much as he can, which he does, I think, pretty well. But at the same time, as I've mentioned with the previous, my previous thoughts on Yakuza in the media, this is the intimidation factor exists in this, and they don't seem to be holding back on this. So the writer of this seems to have the thought that, okay, he's a Yakuza, he's trying to fit in, but he's still Yakuza. Let's keep the intimidation factor in. So the way the guy always seems to stand in every scene, the way he walks, the way he talks, it's all still him being Yakuza. But instead of the gang culture environment, it is the house husband culture environment, which is so funny because it's just. Yeah, it's just kind of hard to figure out.
We'll touch on some of our favorite moments because I think we definitely have to. But I want to just talk about one big pro/con. So I picked this show not because I thought it was like amazing. Well, I do like the show, but I picked this show mostly because it's really laid back and it's the perfect thing to read if you're like at work and you just want to like get your manga fix in. Or if you just want something like what we picked this week, like you want just something you can review that's not going to be like too intense or too many episodes. Like this is perfect for that because you could read like volume 1 and then like you could read for a couple other volumes and like you're not going to miss anything. You're not going to have to like worry about any kind of continuity or like anything like that. It's just it's very laid back. There's no like massive end goal or anything like that. Which is just was great for us this week picking something that's laid back because honestly it was going to be this or I was going to pick something like Kimba the White Lion or the Gon manga, which has no like actual dialogue. It's just cute animals doing things. But I picked this instead because I thought there was at least more to talk about with it. But there's definitely some moments that made me laugh, and I absolutely loved. I think one of my favorite jokes was well, there's two of them I really like. The first one I want to mention is him planning his own birthday, when like he leaves his buddy, who's like an ex yakuza sort of guy, this young dude who was like with him, who's still kind of going, like when his buddy and his wife try and plan him a birthday, and they don't know how to like cook or do anything like that, and so they just make like a complete mess of the house. And he comes back and like he's just like, oh, okay, I'll make a cake. And he just makes everything for himself. And then he's even saying like happy birthday to himself. He's like singing the song to himself. It was both like kind of creepy but so funny as well. What was the moment you liked, Eric?
The moment I liked, definitely the moment I mentioned before, the one of the police sting, because that was just completely, that was really hilarious. But the other favorite moment I have is, I think, the chapter 15 or 16 moment where he meets up with a old rival of his who just recently got out of prison, and he was running a crepe van. So he was making crepes from it. And it ended up looking like they were about to have a fight, and instead they just make desserts, and
like
they put it on their Instagram. And they put it on their Instagram to see who would win from the most likes. And I'm like, wait, hang on, what? What? It was just so weird and random. I loved it.
Now, I saw something in the comments. Do you think that like is from his wife, or do you think that's from his friend who was with him?
Probably his friend. I reckon it's from the friend. Because it's it's like, usually on Instagram you would have a decent number of likes and dislikes from people, but having only one like, and there's 3 people there, and one of those people is friends with one of the competitors, it's not rocket science to understand how that happened. And it was depressing to see the guy lose, because that crepe looked so good. It did well with the comedic element of saying that. So bros before old rivals who potentially could win as well.
The best, like the thing in this manga is great is that the fact that like the start of it has like one of the best like just comedic moments of this guy comes to like scam him with these like really bad knives, and instead of like shooing him away, like scaring him away like he could, or like telling him like no, or like having a look at like the knives and they go, yeah, sure, I'll buy like these. He like opens the door and he's like, I've got to test this, and then he basically like makes him a full meal. And then I think he buys the knives off him, and I was like, Jesus. Oh, no. He almost buys, he's like thinking of buying the knives, and then the guy's like, oh no, this guy's pretty weird, like I should just leave.
I think it's the fact he realized that this guy could potentially use a cheap knife to make some good food. And then the guy's just like, oh, I give up. This is just too fantastic. It was really great. And I think the other what is it? I think the other thing the other thing about that is the fact that it's amazing that this guy has somehow managed to get a con artist to give up on life, give up on this kind of life of his. If the con artist appears again and he's doing anything other than con arting, I can see that Tatsu did a really great job.
So let's get into, we've talked about a lot of things we like, pros and cons. Biggest pro for me right here would be I like the the art is just really good, just really well detailed with the fashion. I can't remember if this is a female or a male, because like there's female characters in it, but they're not drawn in like a fan servicey way. They're not drawn like a.
They're drawn in a very cutesy version, which is like a massive contrast to how the males are drawn.
Yeah, like
most of the time the males are drawn in a more.
The way she looked, I felt like it looked like a woman had drawn like the woman, because like it seemed like the fashion was like more. There was more attention to it than the actual other than the main character. Like most of the other characters' physical features weren't like the biggest thing they paid attention to. It was more the like hairstyle and the clothing, like especially with the female characters.
Yeah, it's yeah, I'm not too hung up on that, but
Oh, not a complaint. I
especially
just thought it
since
was
yeah,
interesting,
no.
like to me personally.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It definitely was a bit interesting, and it's not to say that all the females and all the males are drawn at these opposite ends of the spectrum. You know, there are some males that are drawn in a much more softer image, like the guy who gets bullied at a flea market, or you know, the wife in some scenes when she's just like, "Oh, you've got to be kidding me," you know, the "you've got to be kidding me" moments.
Yeah,
Um,
like the
but
moment
for
when
the
they're
most
trying
part, it does
clothes
look
on
like
for him.
yeah, pretty much, and also the moment where Tatsu and this butcher are discussing how to make a tonkatsu, and what she might be thinking is, are these guys talking about murder? Which I thought was pretty funny as well, and a really fantastic detailed drawing and shading of the characters. The other, I think, but just to kind of summarize that point, is no the characters do get drawn at opposite
Oh
spectrums,
no,
and
I just thought
the,
like to me it just looked like I just thought there was more attention paid to the fashion, which I thought was really cool. Like it's not a diss, it's more of a compliment if I'm being honest.
mm,
That's just what I noticed. Like I thought it was drawn. It's drawn by a guy called Kosuke Ono, so it's not drawn by a female. That could be a pseudonym though. But I just thought maybe that was the case because it seemed like there was a lot of like good attention paid to like the way the fashion's drawn, the way hair's drawn, like a lot of the physical look of the character rather than like the facial features and the action. Like there's good action, but it seems like there was more attention like paid to like the looks of the characters.
wait, would you actually define this as having a lot of action? Because to me, it looks like
Oh
it's
no,
just
there's a couple like action
exaggeration of
shots,
movement.
but you know what I mean. Like the
Oh
action
yeah,
is not
yeah,
the
yeah.
centerpiece, and like you can tell that's
No,
not
no,
his
no,
main
it's not.
focus as the artist when it is there. Like it's more how the
Mm-hmm.
characters look when they're running, or when they're cutting, or when
Yeah,
they're doing like their thing.
and it's just as easily being said about the environment as well,
Mm.
because when you look at the shops, when you look at the mall, you can look at the outside, there's a lot of effort put into creating the environment around these characters. So there's the art the what is it, the author seems to have put more effort into how they draw their characters and how they show their characters through either
Well,
intimidation
yeah.
factors or just general factors, and the environment more than the actions.
Let's give
So,
let's just give credit where it's due, because most of the time backgrounds are usually done by assistants. So he probably has a good team. I just want to make sure we give credit to the assistants who probably worked really hard on those backgrounds and did a great job on that.
that's definitely true.
Because that's one thing that usually doesn't always get noticed. But in most cases of manga, there's usually a few exceptions. Manga is done by a lot of different people, and there's always usually someone who does like background work and that sort of thing. So it's good, yeah, that there's someone who does really good background art for this, because this could get away with like having really plain looking backgrounds with the just the great character
Yeah.
designs, but it doesn't do that, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, so it kind of takes a backseat to the kind of action we'd see where it's a lot of hitting, it's a lot of chasing, or it's a lot of just
Well, a lot of action lines
some
used to
explosions. Yeah,
emphasize, yeah.
yeah, essentially. And instead, it focuses more on how the characters act, their expressions, the details on them, and the environment, and then makes a story from that,
Yeah.
which
Well,
works
I would
pretty
say
well
their
in this
actions are
series.
told through the way they look and like their facial expressions and like the way their head moves and things like that. Like it's more visual, and the jokes are very visual as well.
Hmm.
Like there's obviously the comedic part of like there's a visual thing going on, and the funny part of it is that this yakuza person is doing it. Like, but it's it's the physical action that's usually the yeah. I'm explaining the joke a little too much, but One thing, so I've already brought up the con before, that this manga is kind of repetitive, but hey, if this is what you're looking for, like just something to get your manga fixed, then it's great. But I will say, I did find Masa kind of annoying sometimes, the young dude with the like spiky blondish sort of looking hair. He gets a little bit annoying sometimes. Like, he's funny. I do love the fact that when they first meet, like, he comes up to him and like our protagonist Tatsu just ignores him, and then like he keeps on following him, and he ends up like in a cooking class with him. And then Masa, like halfway through the cooking class, is like, "What the fuck am I doing here?" And, like, slams the the thing they just cooked on the ground.
Yeah. And then Tatsu gets angry and slaps him around.
It was really funny, and I'm glad that Tatsu like gives him the business. But there's a couple moments where I'm like, Jesus, Masa, can you get the like, where he's just like pestering him about like, oh, come back and be a Yakuza again, come back. It's like, oh, shut up.
Yeah, it's really good. It was a really good scene, and I guess it's one of the two or three scenes where the young guy, finally changes and becomes, becomes someone who tries to learn how to be a decent person, like Tatsu is, or as close to being a decent person as possible.
Yeah. And we see his Yakuza boss later on is like fine with the way he lives, and he's got a cute dog now, and yeah. So what's our final thoughts? Is this a recommend? Are you gonna keep reading? I'm gonna say like I'll read this occasionally when I'm in the mood for it, but it's not like it's something I feel like I have to like finish.
Yeah, it's I feel like it's that one series that's just gonna keep going until the author just runs out of ideas. Which might happen, might not happen. I'm not sure, but in the case that the author does run out of ideas, then that's probably when it'll finish.
So it doesn't, I wouldn't want to read this for like forever. I don't want this to be like thousands of issues. But it's funny. It's funny every now and then.
Yeah, it is one joke used for many, many different scenarios. So the reason I think it might be quite entertaining is the fact that it's a Yakuza trying to fit into real life.
Yeah.
Now let's see how many scenarios we can put in him. Yeah. Put in the middle to see where he'll survive and where he won't. Yeah. So I think that's where it kind of tries to have a continuous.
So I think we would both continue. We'd both recommend you give this maybe a check out, but you don't have to like be in any rush to finish it, or like, just take your time. If like you want something to read, just to lay back, like have a funny manga to read, this is a good one to read. So this has been episode 22 of Alternating with Erik, and next week Erik is going to pick what we are going to review. So I'm interested to see what that's going to be. I think he's got something already lined up. I think we've already discussed a little bit about it, but I'm looking forward to that. And now it'll be, if it's an anime series, then it's going to be 3 episodes. If it's a movie, then it's going to be a movie. If it's an OVA, like what we just did, then we're just probably going to watch 1 episode of the OVA because that's movie length. But yeah, this has been Alternating with Erik. Catch you later.
Bye.